So are you a bad sports dad? Are you a bad sports parent in general? Perhaps you're a chastiser, a comparer, a cheerleader, someone who's completely clueless, or someone who's a chooser. Today, we want to talk about how we as parents can create a culture that helps our young athletes to succeed. Well, hello, it's Dr. Jason Parker with JP3 Player Performance, where our goal is to grow young athletes and help them get the most from their training. And as you know, at JP3, we focus on three core areas. First is the psychology or the mindset. Next is the performance or the skill set. And lastly is parenting or the environment of every young athlete. Now, as we know, parents set the stage or cultivate the environment that their athlete is in. There is a scientist named Dr. Emoto who has performed experiments using water. Now, as we all know, but sometimes forget, water takes the shape of its environment. Water literally becomes whatever the environment is around it. If the environment is cold, water becomes ice. If the environment is round, water literally becomes round. But did you know that water not only takes the shape of its environment externally, but also internally? I'm talking about even down to the molecular structure. And why this is important is because we as humans are composed of more than 60% water. Dr. Emoto's experiments aim to prove is that our molecular structure as humans is changed by our environment. And so what Dr. Emoto basically did was put water into separate petri dishes. He then spoke either positive words or negative words over each petri dish. Now, what was interesting was that he froze the petri dishes. After he brought them out of the freezer, those petri dishes that had positive affirmations spoken over them were beautiful. They had crystalline-like formations within the frozen water. But what was even more interesting was those petri dishes that had negativity spoken. They had ugly, rounded, misshapen formations in the frozen water. This literally proves to us that our words have so much power over our molecular structure as human beings. We've heard this when you say, talk to a plant positively and it'll grow. And it's the same thing for our kids. Now, one of the most interesting parts of Dr. Emoto's experiments was actually the fact that he then took it one step further. And any petri dish that was frozen with misshapen and ugly formations inside the frozen water, he then spoke positivity over and refroze them. And you know what happened? They began to form the pretty crystal structures as the other water samples did, which had positive affirmations spoken over them. So what does this tell us? First and foremost, what we say matters. Secondly, what we say can be overcome. So if you said negativity in the past, no worries, let's start anew. And thirdly, what we say today makes all the difference. So now that you know that your words as a parent will absolutely help shape and determine the course of your young athlete's development, let's talk about some parent prototypes that you want to either adopt or avoid. It's important to note that these parent prototypes all start from a place of positivity, although they don't all end up there. All parents are either yelling or not yelling. However they're interacting with their young athlete is ultimately in an effort to help them grow. It just sometimes gets out of pocket. It sometimes goes beyond the realm of helping and sometimes goes into the realm of hurting young athletes. I think it's important today that we not only outline the prototypes, but identify which portions of each prototype we should be using and we should not. Our first parent prototype is the chastiser. And this is the parent prototype who is always challenging their young athlete in a negative way. This is the parent prototype that is simply calling their young athlete out. Hey, you didn't play hard enough. Maybe you didn't play fast enough. Maybe you didn't execute on the things we worked on. But overall, this parent brings a lot of negativity to the table. I'm a self-professed chastiser, and I grew up in a chastising household. My dad was a chastiser. And believe it or not, it actually made me into the player that I became. However, there are some parts of chastising in my particular story that have hindered my son's development rather than helped his development. But know this, chastising is based in positivity and has some positive elements that you as a parent need. And the positive side of chastising is the accountability. Because if we want our young athletes to grow at a high level and get the most of their training, we must hold them accountable, okay? As I always tell you, that coach that they're playing for isn't there every time they pick up a ball. That trainer that they're working with isn't there. That environment that they're in, that they're playing in, isn't always the environment they're going to be in. But you as a parent are there 90 to 100% of the time that they pick up a ball. So you have to be able to hold them accountable based on what they're working on and if they're applying it. So from accountability to application. So do not throw out the baby with the bathwater, because the accountability piece of being a chastiser is actually a positive thing. Our next parent prototype is the comparer. The comparer is the parent who is constantly comparing their young athlete to others around them, holding them to a standard that is not their own. The negative portion of being a comparer is the fact that the parent is holding the young athlete to a standard that isn't their internal standard. They're not going in with a purpose, which we say the purpose for every young athlete's training is to have them engaged, encouraged, and elevated at their own pace. So it is a negative thing when, as a parent, we expect our young athlete to be somebody else. But hold up, there's a positive side to being a comparer too, because as we all know, growth and success is often determined by those around us. And so there's an element of self-awareness that the comparer brings, which young athletes need. Our next parent prototype is the cheerleader. This is the parent who is always constantly positive, that is always saying positive things. You know, the parents who have been coached up to say, "I love to watch you play, son," or "Daughter, that was a wonderful game." And obviously, the cheerleading parent brings a lot of great positivity, but there's some negativity that can be found to the cheerleading parent. Because as we talked about with the chastiser and the comparer, accountability and self-awareness is very important to help your young athlete grow and get the most of their training. So you as a parent have a duty. You as a parent cannot avoid the responsibility of holding your young athlete accountable or helping them to be self-aware when they may think they're a great shooter, or they may think they're hustling, or they may think they're having great body language. And you as a parent have to actually be that mouthpiece, that voice to say, "No, actually coach was right in this situation. Actually, there's a reason why you're getting the results that you're lacking, or you're getting the results that you're getting is because of what you're putting out there. Maybe you're not playing hard enough. Maybe you're not holding your form as your trainer or your coach has taught you. Or maybe you're not executing on a certain play as they've been taught." And so even as a cheerleader, sometimes as parents, we can fall short. Now, the next parent prototype is the clueless parent. This is the parent who is completely unengaged and will drop their young athlete off at their training and practices and games and really has no engagement, no clue of what their young athlete is working on. Now, you may think that's a bad dad or that's a bad sports parent, but believe it or not, there's some positivity to being clueless. First and foremost, you're not tying the athletic success of your young athlete to your ultimate relationship and interaction with your young athlete. This is a good thing. You are loving and respecting and interacting with your young athlete for who they are and not for what they do on the field or the court. However, as we stated earlier, being unengaged as a parent means it is not going to help your young athlete grow to their highest level and get the most of their training. You are obviously investing time and money and resources into your young athlete to help them get the most, to help them accomplish their goals in their sport. It's important that you bring that accountability piece as well as that awareness. And the last parent prototype is the chooser. And yes, you got it. The chooser is the parent who knows how to deploy each and every parent prototype when the time is right. There is a time to be a chastiser. Perhaps your young athlete is struggling in some component of the game. Maybe it's socially, maybe it's in their effort, maybe it's in a particular skill set, maybe it's in their mindset. You, as a parent, have the responsibility to manipulate the environment to help them succeed. And sometimes you do that by chastising in a positive way. Maybe it's saying, hey, you can do much better. You are much better than what you showed today. Sometimes parents need to use the comparer prototype in order to say, what is Susie doing to become a better shooter? If you notice what Clayton, how he responds whenever something negative happens, he responds with positivity and you respond with negativity. So there are times when you should deploy comparison in a positive way to help young athletes become more self-aware and be able to self-correct in a quicker manner. The cheerleader prototype is obviously awesome because it brings great energy. And as a parent, going back to Dr. Emoto's experiments, the more positivity you can bring on a daily basis. What I tell parents all the time is you should be saying positive affirmations the very first time you see your kid in the morning and the very last time you see them at night, if nothing else. Start that practice of growing them with positive affirmation. Good morning, champ. How are you? I love you, son. I love you, daughter. Thank you for what you did yesterday, taking out the trash. I'm so proud of you for staying up late and finishing your homework. Just begin to cheer them on in all areas of life, because for so many of us, we take what our young athletes do for granted. All the positive things, how they worked hard at a workout, how they gave their all during a practice session. It's not just did they score 20 points or have 10 rebounds. It's were they out there competing in an engaged, encouraged, and elevating mindset? And that's what it's all about. You're going to employ the clueless prototype when it's time to just disengage from the sport, when it's time to maybe go on a vacation or take a break, or even just a mental break. There are times when my kids get in the car following the sport and we go to get ice cream or we go to eat dinner and we don't even discuss the game. It's just time to get away from the dynamic of seeing them only as young athletes. That's why all parents need to become a chooser and be able to shift between the various prototypes in order to help grow their athletes and help them get the most of their training. So now that you know the parent prototypes, I want to prime you as parents to be able to use and deploy the right prototype when the time is right and when the opportunity presents itself. So here are some parent priming tips that you should employ before deploying a particular prototype. These priming tools should be used anytime you see your young athlete struggling and you are feeling your blood pressure rise and you are getting frustrated and you want to go into your comfort prototype. This will help you get out of the comfort prototype, whichever prototype is most comfortable to you, and this will help you choose the right prototype. First and foremost, when you're frustrated as a parent, I need you to step away and sigh aloud. Why do we do this? Because we need you to unplug from the situation. I see parents all the time and they're yelling on the sidelines or they're walking to the car and just chastising or comparing. The first thing we need to do is unplug, taking a deep breath. Stepping away and sighing aloud is a way to reset our energy. The next thing I need all parents to do is to see anew. Develop new vision around the context of the situation that your young athlete is. Often we are comparing our young athletes to the situation they're in, when if we took them out of that situation and put them in another situation, they would more often than not be standout. Just the fact that you're even watching this tells me that you care about your young athlete's success. So remember that when comparing them to the people that they're playing with right now, or the situation that they're in right now. There are millions of young athletes throughout the globe, and your young athlete would probably fare very well against 90% of them. And so don't forget about the context of the situation. Maybe your young athlete didn't have great rest the night before. Maybe they didn't have a great meal. Maybe there's other pressures. Maybe they're coming off an injury. Maybe this is their first time, or they're new to this particular group they're playing with. To see anew is just a reminder to remember the context and that there's a greater goal in this entire process. And the last thing I need you to do is set aside time to discuss this issue, to work on how to improve in this issue. If it's a performance flaw or a performance shortcoming, if it is a mindset or environment-based shortcoming or flaw, then we're going to set aside time to address it when we are calm and when we are able to see the situation from a variety of contexts. I hope this helps you to continue to help your young athlete grow to their highest level. Remember to check out jp3training.com for more great tools and tips.